And then there's a fly right on the lens. I'm just waiting for it to. Yeah. One of the vehicles we've been working on is Stefan's Big Blue Ox, he calls it. It is a International with a DT570 diesel in it. Comes with a turbo right off the bat, turbocharged diesel. This thing tows a bunch of cargo to Glamis. So it is a functional vehicle. He daily drives this thing a lot. It's fully appointed on the inside. It is fully built in the rear. It is, when he ordered this International, he ordered it the most high performance and heavy duty model they made. And then he modified it from there. So we're not gonna cover the whole truck right now. We're just gonna cover one portion, because once this portion is done, then we're gonna go out, take it out, drive it on the street, go through the performance, listen to how it sounds, and talk to Stefan too about his build process with this. Stefan was one of my original, so when I started doing work up here, I was at Evan Weller's, and Evan was helping me out. And he was kind of lining up specific, like, specialty sheet metal that would fit the bill for me and what I do and my capabilities. And Stefan's roof scoop on his Bug was one of the first things that I was working on as a side job after hours when I was working in another shop. And then transitioned into doing, that was kind of my first project I had on my own. So I value Stefan and I respect him, and he always has cool projects. And we are not just an off-road shop. There's no off-road in my name. We are a design studio and a design facility, whether that's consulting with design or that's just taking any project you give us and putting the most optimal design, functional design into that package as we can. And that's what we are and what we are known for and what we're going to continue to be known for. So right now, what we're working on with this thing is a compound turbo setup. Stefan had this plan a while back. He tows a huge fifth wheel with this thing, with his Bug in the back, big gooseneck style thing. And I think he just wanted to compound turbo it just to get optimal power out of it. And you know, the fact his engine, I think it got built too, but it can take that load. So, you know, with me, I wanted to get him something special where we had, you know, the thing is, things to consider is, like, the turbo needs to be hard mounted to the engine somewhere, because the other turbo is hard mounted to the exhaust manifold. You just want things to not move, because big trucks like this, they flex. The body flexes, the frame flexes, the engine flexes, and they all do it at different ratios, and that all compounds into a lot of movement. So having the secondary turbo now, it needs to kind of coincide with the engine and be almost like hard mounted to that system. When I got into the details, big tubing, wherever we can, all stainless. Titanium was an option, but I don't like the pie cut thing. It's just not my style. It's not what I'm into. I find value in seeing big, beautiful, organic shapes with U-bends or whatever you got to build them out of. Things I wanted to implement into Stefan's build were the use of 12 points, the use of safety wire, really having like a really cool mechanical feeling in there. Also using organic tubing, like, you know, angles and shapes, and having things kind of work in a symmetry of just the pulls and flows. So let's go look at this guy. Got Mr. Saber here. Hit that link. Find an appropriate place for this guy, and then I'm gonna open her up. Go on. All right. All right, so that's what we got right now. There's a complex system going on here. Now, obviously there's like a lot of this is roughed in, it's unwelded. I just wanted to chunk out as much as I could. There is a OEM turbo hiding down in there, right out of the exhaust manifold. And then we have our secondary turbo up here, much larger, It's on a pedestal. That pedestal is blocked into the alternator on the accessory drive. We kind of figured out, well, we don't want to tie into the air conditioner compressor. It's smaller bolts. These are like very big dedicated bolts to tie that bracket, that turbo pedestal, if you will. On top of that, we have a secondary mount. This is all stainless with flared holes, very structural, rigid. This secondary mount that's kind of like a claw that hangs off of this thing, that goes down into a unoccupied threaded hole in the block. We didn't want to tie into the exhaust manifold either, just because you're putting weight and vibration in there, and with something with a gasket or that needs a seal, it's just better to find a hole that's in the block because you want to tie it to the engine, but find a hole where nothing's being used and it's not, you know, doubling as something else, and it can just live as a support. So there's the use of FKA rod ends in here. 12-point hardware throughout. Same with this will be turned into a 12-point. All the stuff on the accessory here where the alternator is will be 12-point and safety wired, just to have like a really kind of fine line. I don't know if it's aviation, but just very mechanical. It has like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Rocketeer, but The Rocketeer was like this iconic movie in the 90s. And I think things like that leave an imprint on you, and some of the styling, like the bracketry, especially this one down here, we'll get down here and look at it from a different angle. It's really reminiscent of that, or like kind of steampunk vibes. So this is 5-inch, and then 3.5 is turbo to turbo, but your big dump is 5-inch. And these are support rods. So like you got to think, this is not just a street truck. It's not just going to get raced, or it's not for highway pulls. It's for going off-road. Stefan will go enter olds all the way through to olds, and he will also dune this truck from like Gecko and the Imperial Sand Dunes over to the top of olds. He won't even take Sand Highway or anything, and it does just that. It's an amazing vehicle. It's insane that something this big can go through the dunes so easy, and it's uber impressive. But that being said, there's a lot of support in this, so this thing can't move around and cause cracking or fatigue on any of the structures, and that's why there's tie-ins and your rod ends and stuff. So we won't go too in depth because I want to be able to cover the cold side of this thing and the filter system on the next episode, but I just want to give you guys an initial kind of icebreaker of what we call the aux. And we'll get a couple hits off this thing as far as walkthroughs and explanations, but right now we're just going to kind of cover this first process of the compound turbo setup and, you know, I guess the thought process going into it. Initially, when this concept, the downpipe, I told Stefan, I was like, I really want to come out of the turbo and like loop-de-loo, like a whirly, almost reminiscent of a turbo, like that. But the 5-inch is, even the CLR, I think it's 7-inch CLR, centerline radius, even that, it plays such a huge role in the design, because me taking that and making a loop here would have been something of the nature of that, like this scale. And where you get into a problem is functionally, this is your intercooler, this is your cold exit going back into the intercooler. So this, having the downpipe next to it, it doesn't make sense from a functional standpoint. And just kind of taking all this and running it out the back of the truck and leaving everything that needs to be cooled in an area where it can be cooled and letting it breathe made sense. So that's why we kind of made a design change up here instead of going big and gnarly like that. And I think it would have just been a really rude, crude kind of waste of space. There's a lot of design and engineering in here to look at that's kind of intricate and detailed, and it has layers where you start going in here, and it's really interesting to look at. So this is also very close to the structure on the clip up here. It's probably 1 inch away. We'll probably need to put some heat shield there. I FaceTimed Stefan when I got to the point of where to make the exit, just to see design direction, like, and see his discretion. There's some custom like billet steps that come down that are assisted here that come down quite a bit. So I wanted to make sure I was respectful of the mechanism there and where that stuff comes out, and also not getting the exit so close to where it's going to make soot and crap all over the billet pieces. But his thing, he's like, I think we're going to get it no matter what. And he's like, just do whatever you think looks right. And I trust that. And that's, man, fortunately, I have a lot of clients like that, and they just trust the process and the design. And I feel like for builders, that's the optimal way of doing something. As long as you work within the constraints and the constraints of functionality, you can really get optimal stuff by just letting someone kind of use their creative licensing on stuff. With this, this exit was, you know, carefully cut. I didn't just lay something out and do it. I started, we talked about not wanting to go past the lower line of the frame. So cut it straight there. And then I started to just lay shape into here with a marker and do what felt right. And you know, slowly I'd kind of cut a little bit rough, and I'd stand back and look at it and cut a little bit. And adding this little snarl was part of the design. It just has a good shape that like lends itself to everything else, and kind of is almost like you're snarling this up a little bit, and the back wall being lower than the outside wall here kind of favors to exiting everything out and not just level, you know, or towards the frame. It just has that right spool to me. And same with like the bellow is in here functionally to let some of the, you know, the expansion go when the turbo to turbo pipe is in there. It's going to expand and contract, and you just want to have a bellow in the right spot. And I wanted to have that bellow in before the hard mount of the downpipe and the other turbo that goes up there are together. So this tie-in is to secure the downpipe, and this stuff, I mean, obviously it's all just taped and stuff where the V-bands are, but you can see like it's extremely rigid, and once it's all in, it's going to move as one. And you can also see that there's some like really rough cuts on the mini fender or the quarter fender, and that's just to start clearancing and look at my options. We're going to want at least an inch or an inch and a quarter of space from all of this on the mini fender. So I just did enough to get the party started to be able to fit everything and design everything. And then once we're finaled and all this is welded, because, you know, it might move a little bit when it's welded, and if you want to really get it crispy, just wait till it's complete and then do your final trim. Same with the hardware hookups here. There's nut plates under here. We're going to run 12 point in here with a little safety wire, so this kind of flared hole gusset all really ties it back in to the rest of the system. That kind of concludes where we're at with the update. Next step for me, get all this welded. What that looks like is on all of the seams, you know, all like the bend seams of the actual piping. I want to polish all that stuff out. It looks really cool when it's brand new. When you do headers and they have the little rainbow, that's awesome. But once they get a lot of heat into them, they just turn into dark gray stripes. And it's going to take away from the flow of this thing, because even though you're going to get that first hit where the colors are pretty, as soon as you start using this thing, this is all going to want to become uniform. And if this isn't polished out, it's going to be a completely different, you know, contrast there. And that seam it's going to play a bad role if we do it like that. So weld everything. Obviously purge all this stuff. The downpipe doesn't necessarily need to be purge welded, but all the other stuff will be purged. This guy, polish out, I guess, all the piping, polish out all the piping, and then the brackets. The brackets are what we will weld secondary, and we'll leave those, because those can just do their own thing and look fabricated on there. There's some other options we might do, just coating altogether, because I think the seamless look, like I talk about leaving the welds on there, but speaking out loud, there might be some kind of other coating. I forget, there's something, electro polishing maybe, something like that. But maybe get something where we just get rid of all the heat marks altogether on all this stuff, and it's just like this pretty stainless unit. Things to think about. So next time you see this, we will have all this done. We will also have the cold side done, and we'll explain stuff like that with the filters and the filter mount. And I'm pretty sure the hard lines will all be done too. So we'll have a complete unit, and then we'll be able to tell about the story and talk about what's there, and then we'll go to another episode where we can take this thing out and either go on the freeway, go get food, or do something, and have Stefan kind of walk us through his story with this thing. Thank you guys for the support. If you like the channel, share the channel. Tell people about it. We're constantly growing, and we want to grow it more. So pick up a shirt if you want, and like, comment, subscribe. Have a good Monday.